But I do want to get some news taken care of before we start digging into this, because the Stony Brook Hall of Fame inductions for 2022 have been announced. And among them, and this is definitely the time of year to be talking about them, is the 2012 baseball team. Mm-hmm. The College World Series. Now, the whole team, not just Jankowski, not just Cantwell, not just Max Tissenbaum or the guys who got drafted. And the reminder, of course, is that it's also the 10th anniversary of Johan Santana's no-hitter, the only one thrown by a Met in a complete game.
Right.
And because of that, the reason why I was not there at Citi Field that night was because I was down in Miami calling Stony Brook, Miami, the first win of that College World Series run.
Well, pick your poison, I mean, heads I win, tails you lose. That's a pretty good. That's a pretty nice fail-safe for you.
Yeah,
I don't think
you
would have had to have really screwed up to make a wrong decision.
Yeah, but it was I no regrets. Let me put it that way.
Right. No,
and I think you know better than anyone too, just because how stacked that team is, Matt. Mm-hmm. It's incredible.
Plus, it's more likely. I mean. We got to see it this year, granted, not a complete game, but it's more likely that the Mets throw a no-hitter than it is that Stony Brook baseball makes it to the College World Series. And that's no disrespect to the program.
At the same time.
Right. The
Mets, oddly, everybody, especially if you're a Met fan, obviously knows that up until that moment, no Met had ever thrown a no-hitter, but several Met pitchers did throw no-hitters after they left the Mets.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Seaver threw one. Doc threw one. Yeah, a few others.
Nolan Ryan, obviously.
Yeah,
Nolan Ryan. David.
7 after he left the Mets.
Yep.
And also the team that joined them the same year, the Colt 45/Astros, they threw more no-hitters in that time period than anybody else. Largely because of Ryan.
Right. And then eventually they became a destitute franchise. So, I mean, it just shows you that no-hitters really at the end of the day mean nothing. Well, a no-hitter is a great individual accomplishment. And you are the star of the game. But is a no-hitter really more dominant than a complete game one-hit shutout? You know what I'm saying?
It really is.
Or a double no-hitter.
Right. Well, that's a little different. Now a perfect game.
We'll get to that one.
A perfect game. Pretty sure there's been Matt, 20 in Major League Baseball history.
They're relatively rare too.
Yeah, that's different.
I got another little side story. Okay, as you know, Jameson Tyone took one into the 8th inning, 7 complete. And I'm walking down to the clubhouse, and David Cohn walks by, and it's like, that was fun to watch, wasn't it? And I was there.
It was like deja vu.
And I was there when he threw the no-hitter in 99. So I even congratulated him. He doesn't remember, obviously, but because there's so many other people did. But also, rounding out the 2022 Hall of Fame class is Allison Brewster, we know her as Allison Sukrov, of the softball team, one of the first truly dominant pitchers the program had. Darcy Hooser-Ryan, also from the class of 2012 in swimming and diving. Kenneth P. Laval, whose name's on the stadium. Claire Canetti, Claire Peterson back at the time. Women's lacrosse in class of 13. Another early pioneer with the program. Tyler Santucci from the class of 2010 in football. Daler Somerville, class of 05 from men's cross country and track and field. And Jameel Warney.
Oh, well, we all love Jameel. Our only NBA representative.
And the guy who literally carried the team on his back into the NCAA tournament.
Hell yeah,
got kind of sick and tired of getting knocked out in the final. And we were down at the half, remember that game. And he said, enough already. 43 points. And just willed Stony Brook into the NCAA tournament and got Steve Peichel a big payday.
Sometimes you got to do it yourself. Right?
Yeah, I mean, he should have gotten a finder's fee from that because Steve Peichel's income went up by a factor of 5.
You know what I kind of liked about the Hall of Fame stuff is that the 10th anniversary of the 2012 team I thought was pretty neat. But I don't understand why it took Warney so long to get in. He should have gotten in the next year.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
you know,
the baseball
like
team should have as well.
Yeah, you know, like
as a matter of fact,
I think there are just some things that should just go right away. Like
I was asked.
There you go.
You know, what are they doing? What are they doing? I mean, I think they some of the guys made an appearance early in the baseball season, if I recall correctly, but nothing really formal to commemorate that team. Finally, they're doing something in October, which means Travis Jankowski can't be there if he's with the Mets.
Right. Assuming all good things.
No, it is funny too, because for Stony Brook for the Hall of Fame, like you got to be eligible for admission 5 years after you earn the degree from Stony Brook. Unless something tragic, obviously, a posthumous induction is needed.
Danny
and not get waived. Yeah, there's a great example there. But it is funny though, as you said, for baseball team, Jamil Warney, Kylie O'Miller, who I don't think is eligible yet. Those to me are three names off the top of my head. Who, as you said, the moment their careers are done.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can understand. Well, first of all, the whole concept of the 5-year wait for the Professional Sports Hall of Fames is so that if you come out of retirement, I mean, there is one guy who did, a hockey player, Guy Lafleur, who came out of retirement 5 years after he retired, went back and played for a little bit. And Mario Lemieux came out of retirement. I mean, these guys were already in the Hall. I don't think Lemieux was in the Hall of Fame yet when he came back, but Lafleur was already in the Hall of Fame and back as an active player.
No quitting that, man. No.
Yeah, but there's you're going. I think what you're going for here, Matt, is that there you can't go backwards to college. It's not like you're going to come back and participate in athletics. Like it shouldn't. Maybe if you wanted to wait 1 year, if there's like a 1 year, a fifth, you have an opportunity to play a fifth season. I guess now for the next couple of years, or if you wanted to play another sport, if you're going to stay in school for 5 years, you had an opportunity to play another sport for a season. You could. I think that would be neat, but. I think some
super
people
rare.
But I think some people just kind of transcend the school a little bit, and I think Warney would definitely be one of them.
Yeah,
in my opinion, right? Like I don't, how many? I
think he's the only basketball player with his number retired. So I don't know what the point was.
Retire his number and not put him in the Hall of Fame, that makes no sense either.
I think between him and Joe Nathan, right? Those are the two biggest athletes, I would say.
Those two,
right. And
those two
Jankowski probably. Yeah. Jankowski was a first-round pick, so
Jankowski's a journeyman major leaguer, and Joe Nathan's a borderline Hall of Famer.
Right? Yeah, no, that's true too. Yeah, right. But I mean, Jamil Warney. I mean, who had a better professional career, Jamil Warney or Travis Jankowski?
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
Yeah, right. But you know what? You're not supposed to really judge your professional careers because if you take a look at the College Football Hall of Fame, right? A lot of guys in there who distinguished themselves in college and did nothing in the NFL.
Of course.
A lot of quarterbacks.
And Heisman winners.
Heisman winners.
Run down the list of duds who won the Heisman.
Right.
But
someone didn't even play in the NFL, especially in the mid-2000s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite thing I think of this Hall of Fame class, besides obviously the individuals, is just that really there's a lot of recency here. It's celebrating a lot of accomplishments, and most of these names, virtually all of them, are from the last decade. Outside of obviously Lowell, but Dale Somerville as well in 05. It's still relatively recent. All of these accomplishments that and these tremendous student athletes are celebrating, but it shows too the recent growth and success we've seen, under at least this current athletics administration, where, you have a lot of these players who came in at the start of that transition to it or afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's a part of it is the attraction. You start to see things like Laval Stadium come up, and then, then you got the track facility itself. Mm-hmm. And now you got the indoor facility as well, too, as well as redoing the sports complex.
Well, so here's another thing too, that the entire team is being inducted this year, right? I'm just looking back at some of the other individual members of the 2012 team who are already in, and there are a couple. Last year, William Carmona went in. Okay. And also you have, Tyler Johnson. Nick Tropiano left the year before, but he would have been. Jankowski is in. He was inducted in 2017. So,
right. First ballot.
Yep, there are guys in there, and Tom Kohler is in. And
also left earlier than that. Drafted 2008?
Yeah, but he did pitch in the NCAAs in 2008.
Right.
Let's see. I'm trying to remember, see any of the others. Yeah, he would have anyway. He would have been graduated before in 2008. The 2012 guys were freshmen.
No, the 2008, the 2012 guys were seniors in high school.
That's right. They weren't in yet. Okay. Now, just thinking if there was any red shirts in there. But anyway.
But Tropiano and Kohler would have crossed paths.
Right. They would have. But you go back, but here's the other thing. The other thing, you're talking about recent Seawolves, and again, no Patriots in here. Some of these, the early days, they're going back because this thing only started out in 1991, believe it or not, but they would only bring in a couple of people in. And if you run by these names, I actually knew a couple of them, but that goes back to my time, and we're talking 30 years. But now then they started becoming a little bit more relevant in 96 when they brought Chuck Downey in, because Chuck Downey was the first legit football star we ever had. But you look at these, they're all from Division III era, and up until the mid-2000s when you start seeing some Division I players in there. And then what happens is they go 10 years without adding anybody. From 2006 to 2016, it wasn't even touched.
What was the rationale of that? What happened?
Jim Fiore. I don't know if it was his decision not to build on the Hall of Fame, but Fiore, and this wasn't just him, Stony Brook had, and you probably remember from your days as a player too, Greg, Stony Brook had a hell of an inferiority complex.
Yeah, I think it was really weird to be on campus when I was playing because, playing men's lacrosse and being a Division I athlete and the rest of the sports in Division III, and that was kind of like an interesting dynamic as well too. And then watching it kind of like develop from that point in time on. So my entire time there, it was women's soccer, men's lacrosse was Division I, and everybody else was Division III.
Right.
When I left, it went to Division II. All the programs went Division. Obviously Division II.
Well, you left in '98, right?
Yeah.
So 94, everybody went Division II. So when you were there, everybody was Division II, except for men's lacrosse and women's soccer. And '99, they went D1. Everybody across the board.
Right. Went D1. Was it that early? I don't remember it being that early for Division II.
But again, Stony Brook.
Was it the NEC? They played in the NEC at that point in time?
NECC, we were D2 by that point.
Right.
New England Collegiate Conference, not the Northeast Conference, which we did play in football. It's going to be very interesting landscape also in the coming years, because when Brooklyn and LIU Post merged to become just plain old LIU, they joined the Northeast Conference. So you've got Division I Northeast Conference school not far away from us. You got Hofstra, and you got us, all on Long Island. So and that, of course, keep calling it Post because of 50 years of knowing it as Post. But LIU baseball got to the NCAA this year.
Yes, they did, and so did Hofstra.
Yes, they did. And Hofstra is going to be super dangerous because they have a guy. There are two coaches on Long Island who've gotten their teams to College World Series. Matt Sink is one, and Frank Catalanato is another. He did it with New York Tech. Exactly.
And John LaRocca might have been on that team. Do we remember John LaRocca, or did I just drop a name and everyone's like, hey, who was that?
Yeah, the NYT team. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I miss John LaRocca.
But it tells you something, too. But they're still covering up for that 10-year gap because Kenneth P. Laval, his name's on the stadium. He's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I was going to say, too, with the teams as well. Now we're starting, obviously, the introduction here with baseball. They're the first team. And to me, I don't think they'll be the last. I don't see too many other teams getting in, but two off the top of my head, I think definitely deserve a spot. Were the undefeated number one ranked women's lacrosse team back in 2017.
Oh, yes.
And probably that 2010 men's lacrosse team that made it to the Final Four.
And not only that, nobody from that era, and we're talking about last 5-6 years, 7 years even. Nobody from that era is in yet.
Yeah, not eligible for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, but to keep it relevant, don't you think?
McBride is in. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I was say to me, those are the two obvious.
You got record setters, you got national record setters, you got Tewaaraton finalists, you got superstars all over the place, and Kevin Crowley is in, but of course he's from a few years earlier. But it's been a mix. I mean, the perfect example was that 2016 crowd. Herb Brown goes way back to D3. Kevin Crowley was much more recent, but again, only 5 years. He was like first ballot Hall of Famer. Yeah, Kohler, another one. Okay, but Emeka Smith's D3. I mean, Kurt Hill and Jeff Bernstein and I, we were classmates with Emeka Smith, and we called him on the radio too. But he was a hair under 2,000 points. I think was Warney the first 2,000 point scorer? I believe he was.
Is he the only 2,000 point scorer?
He is 100. Okay, I believe.
Yeah, I definitely believe so. He was.
Yeah, he would be the leading scorer. Then
it was.
Absolutely.
It was right. Smith's record. He broke.
Right.
Smith was a hair under 2,000.
Yeah, no, that was close. He finished with 1978. Smith did. So yeah, he was close.
88, 89.
Yeah.
Smith was. Yeah, that was definitely late 80s. Yeah, again.
No, I mean, he finished with 1,978 points.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, you're right. That was held until Warney beat it with 2,000.
Yeah.
And 1,000 boards on top of it. Absolutely incredible. Well earned this Hall of Fame spot. But no, it's the exciting Hall of Fame, man. We're about to go through some of the moments from this year, and there may be a Hall of Fame round 2 on some of these teams.
I think there's definitely a couple of them in there. Yeah.
I think there might be one in every single moment that I list.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. We'll see.
Well, there's definitely one in my top moment.
Yeah, well, I already know what you're alluding to, and I would have to agree with that. But with that being said, now that we are transitioning, how do we want to do this, gentlemen? Do we want to take turns reading our lists, or do we want to go, I do number 10, Greg does number 10, Ken does number 10? Like, how do we want to do this?
We put this together too quickly to rank them. I would say throw out some events and then rank them.
Yeah, I think individually would be the best way, especially, as you said, to see where kind of we stack up, where our moments would rank, or if they even rank, because we definitely got some moments.
All right, but do you guys at least have 10 moments?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I certainly have 10 moments.
Okay, good. I have 10 moments, too.
I think you should lead us off.
All right, then.
Actually, you know what? I want to say this before we get started here.
Go ahead.
I think the biggest moment of the year, and I don't think it's a negative that I think is going to be a positive.
Oh, I agree with this.
Is to move to the CAA.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, so I think we take that off the table now.
Yeah, I was going to say
I think that's the biggest moment because I think it brings it has such an impact on all the teams from the winter and the spring on their
how they finish.
Season and how they finish. But I also think in the long run, I think it's going to be very, very good for Stony Brook. We've railed on it a little bit this year as a negative because of how the America East kind of handled it, but I think it's the biggest moment is moving to the CAA.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's the thing specifically because I was gonna say that I think this is the de facto number one. Is Stony Brook moving up to the CAA just huge? It's something that will, especially just because they'll speculate for so long. Even back when I was a student 5 years ago, and when I started out, there's always these moves of is Stony Brook going to move up? And I especially didn't believe the hype, even though the people were advocating for it. I just didn't see it happening, especially not so soon as this year. But yeah, there's obviously so many talks, and this year it felt like moved pretty fast from when the word first came out that there was speculation Stony Brook may move, and within the end of the month, or rather the month after, Stony Brook announces they're moving to the CAA starting 2022-23 season. So obviously I think that's the biggest moment. Obviously the biggest negative moment is their disqualification from conference play. Don't gotta rag on about that, but
we could do that if
we've done enough. More than enough.
Yeah, we really got to answer that pretty good.
Yeah.
Ken, what was the article that you had showed us maybe even a week or two before it came out? It was rumored. Yeah, it was rumored that was what was coming our way.
The one thing that we did find out, and I read a feature article, and I forget where, where the CAA themselves were very aggressive in pursuing new members. Mm-hmm. So not only were the books sort of open for people to step forward, but they pursued Stony Brook.
For sure. And we already had the easy in not easy, but we already had the leg up with football already being there.
That's also very true.
Yeah, just to remind everyone, Stony Brook's not the only team moving in, because Hampton and Monmouth as well were all announced.
Right, and Carolina North Carolina A&T, NCA&T, I believe that's their.
Well, North Carolina A&T, isn't that a historically black college?
I think it might be, yeah, and they're also
that's another thing they pursued. They actually wanted to bring in a couple of historically black colleges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely increasing that aspect. But that too, with obviously JMU leaving here, adding these 4 schools, I believe it expands the conference to 14, and obviously that's going to be huge going forward for really every school, because I don't think they've been a part of a conference where there's been this many teams they have to compete against. And obviously it's going to be split into divisions, I'm sure. So really you're likely going up against 6 or 7 other schools. But
it'll probably be north and south.
Exactly.
14 schools being, that's a tough one to divide up. But at least it's better than the 6 to 8 schools we've been dealing with. I know the American East has 10 schools, but not all 10 schools play every single sport that Stony Brook is involved with. So you have the baseball league has 8 teams and 6 of them are making the playoffs. It's a joke, So it's going to be nice now seeing teams actually get eliminated and seeing teams with something to play for. I mean, look, I think we all became Hartford fans that last week of baseball. I think we all kind of like Hartford now, but 10 games below 500, you shouldn't be in the playoffs, right? Is that a hot take? Or
it's like the NHL when it first started.
The number
where,
4
there's
teams,
so few leagues that you could be 20 games under 500 and still playoff spots.
But the number 4 team when it was 4 back before it went to 6, the number 4 team usually had a bad record. It was usually Albany.
Funny enough, yeah.
Albany got eliminated this year.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we got a little too.
Albany was the odd man out this year. That was another little nice add-on.
Yeah,
nice
how funny was that?
Nice singer.
Hartford and Albany out. That was.
I think Monmouth could become a rival.
I do too.
I think there's just the proximity, and I think you're right. If they break the conference into a north and a south. It's so close, and once again, it's going to be the battle of the athletes, because you're looking at the tri-state area for a lot of sports for the athletes.
And Monmouth has a solid football program.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yeah. Well, nothing's being Hofstra. Let's not.
Well, Hofstra doesn't have a football program.
No, but for
talk
another
about
sport,
CAA,
it's going to be
schools that don't participate in every sport, and the alumni are still. I mean, look. Those of you listeners who are not familiar with why Hofstra dropped football, a fellow named Rabinowitz, president of Hofstra University, decided that in order to finance a medical school, he had to get the money from somewhere, and believed that football was a big money waste. And let's face it, football is usually the most expensive program in an athletic department. So he said, okay, we're going to trade away football to build a medical school, and that was pretty much what happened. Now, from that point of view, you could say, okay, made the school better, but there are a lot of alumni out there who miss football.
It's not like they produced Wayne Corbett and Marcus Colson and Willie Colon. It's not like they actually had prominent football players coming out of their school or anything like that.
Right, and
I don't know. I think
it's not that the Jets used to have their training camp there, or
See, Matt, that's my take on it. I actually don't think it was for the medical school. I think the Jets were paying for the football program.
That's also true. You're paying rent on Eubank Hall. Yeah.
When they lost the Jets, I think that was it. They lost that cash cow.
Yeah, when the Jets moved to Florham Park.
Yeah,
that was a tough one.
Well, I mean, remember the Giants were at Albany?
Yep.
Then they put their own facility in New Jersey, but way back 20 years ago, in 2002, first year in the America East. For lacrosse, for men's lacrosse, we played on one of the Giants' practice fields, which was essentially a beautifully cultivated piece of grass, but had no stands, no press box, and a battery-operated scoreboard. And what they had to do was actually run a power cord out from the basketball arena to the field in order for that have any power anywhere. And they put us on one of those, one of those scaffold type things that rise up, and put us there. We had to hook up to a cell phone in order to broadcast the game.
Just wrap it up too. The move to CAA, I think it's gonna get Stony Brook that. Those sort of, I said, just the branding is gonna help it grow, obviously, and you could see opportunities like that where maybe they go to Met spring training camp or a spring training park to play games, during their non-conference schedule.
We talk about Maine and Lowell both having minor league quality ballparks because minor league teams play there. But you should. Have you seen what College of Charleston plays in? Have you seen what some of these other, especially the Southern teams? The Southern teams kill and blow us away in terms of baseball facilities. These are the teams that that Stony Brook would go down to play in the spring or in the late winter. So now they're going to be in your conference. I do believe that Matt Sanku is going to be up to the task. I think. Remember, they played Hofstra and beat Hofstra up pretty good this year. Yeah. So, and Hofstra won the CAA this year.
Yes.
Well, if there's a guy that you're not going to question for his coaching ability for this is going to be Matt Sank.
Yeah,
you're not going to question.
The question is going to be the recruiting. Can he get the level of talent?
Yeah,
needs to compete consistently at the top level of the CAA. I think he can, but you know what? The pressure is going to be on.
I think this very team is good enough. Right now.
The pressure is going to be on. Gotta upgrade the facility. And
agreed.
They had 100%. The one big boost 10 years ago. Actually, it was 2010, 2011. 2011, I think, was the first time we hosted the America East tournament at Joe Nathan Field. And it was the field was brand new, okay? Joe Nathan himself had contributed $500,000 to get that field put in. The field's great. Nobody complains about the field. Everything around it, it has no plumbing. It has no internet. Barely has power. Ugh.
Yeah, it's tough. But
hopefully, they get those amenities, and I think producing more moments like they produced this year, like 7 years ago, it may help with that.
Right, absolutely. And let me say before I get into the 10 that I brought tonight, there is no real criteria for this. These are just our individual top 10 favorite moments. So my moments, I decided to stick with, moments on the field, but of course, the announcement that Stony Brook is moving conferences, that does count as a sports moment. So there's no rules to this game we're playing. Okay. I just wanted to,
like George Carlin says about his sports routine. These are my rules. I make them up.
Yeah. Right. No question there. Definitely.
Yeah, he was the guy who said gymnastics wasn't a sport because Romanians are good at it.
Right. Well, he also said lacrosse is not a sport. It's you could
bleep college activity.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, Greg.
Running around with a stick with a net on the end is not a sport.
Good times. I miss George Carlin. But anyways, drum roll, please. Starting off my list, number 10. My number 10 top moment from Stony Brook athletics this past year was Elijah Alani's return from injury. So
interesting.
I figured this one might be a little controversial, which is why I decided to go with it, because I figured nobody else would match it. I tried
as a 10, it might rate.
No, not for me.
Yeah, well, that's why it's number 10. It wasn't going any higher than that. But again, he was the prodigal son, right? And he returned to Stony Brook basketball, transferred down to Miami for a year, comes back. It's all romantic. Just his third game back, he strains his knee. He's helped out of the lineup for over a month, and the injury wasn't disclosed. Torn ACL was floated out there. We didn't know if we were ever going to see Elijah again, but January 8th, he comes back, he checks into the game off the bench, and he leads his team to a victory. Scores 16 points, has a really good game. They beat the rival Maine. That might have been their conference opener, too. When he checked in, man, it was not a big crowd because it was an intersession crowd. It was January.
Right.
But
plus COVID restrictions.
but he got quite the round of applause. If there were 200 people in that gym, all 200 of them were clapping and cheering. Elijah carries quite the presence with him. So that was one of my favorite moments this year, was watching him come back. And we're going individually, right? So I'm just going to go through all 10.
Yeah, but I think definitely to break them down too in between is great, because I think it's an interesting moment. It's not one on my list, but I think, the points you brought up definitely, add to that. I know definitely some of our listeners are vehemently against that, definitely,
sure.
Scoring from him, just really his mention. I know we're going to hear from it online, but, I think it's a great point, because again, this was a guy who was the face of this program, I think, after Warney left. Literally, I think he was a freshman the year Warney graduated. So he was the guy, from 2017 to about 2019 that was leading the team offensively primarily. But he was the guy that, he was essentially the captain, at least, from our vantage point,
right,
for the team for those couple seasons. Him and Quasi-Ebola, I think. And obviously, will leave, so Olani has a bigger role. Then obviously COVID hits, everything, all of that. We spoke with him on the sports section, and by the end of that month, as you said, he was going to Miami. It was such a huge shock because, also I think he also announced he was going to try to go to the NBA and announced his draft selection before he took it back and went to Miami. But again, it was a big shock, and him getting a return, I think, was something no one outside of him maybe expected, because we didn't even know he could do that.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's an interesting thing too. There is just that, it was so unexpected, just this whole season, and none of us knew how it was going to play out. And I'm pretty sure, I don't think anyone wanted to plan out the way it ended up.
I think of all the ways that we thought it could pan out, the way it did was not the way we expected. We didn't, I guess nobody ever rules out injury. We didn't expect a double defection, but of course that's not in my top 10, just his return from injury. My main reason why I picked that was because I was reporting on that game, and I was there to consume the energy in Island Federal. Again, not a big crowd, but dude, the applause he got. It was literally, it reminded me of watching David Wright's last game on TV. Just everybody was like standing. Oh man. It was so, just it's such a breath of fresh air to see him back on the court, back where he belonged. Now, number 9 for me, Tyson Lawton going coast to coast on the first play. So, they're in the football team. They're in the middle of what was a lost season, right? They're 1-5 overall, 0-3 in conference. They've lost each of their last 8 home games dating back to 2019. And now they have to host Delaware, who's ranked 15th in the nation. And what do you know? Very first play of the game, you're backed up at your own 1-yard line, and the Red Sea parts, and Tyson Lawton goes from one goal line to the other. 99-yard rushing touchdown. Stony Brook, they were so energized. They pulled off the upset blowout, 34-17, first conference win of the season. And really, it was the beginning of their second season. We always say they had 2 seasons in one season, the 1-5 season and the 4-1 season. Well, that was opening day for the 4-1 season. So how are we feeling about that one?
You know what? I'm going to say this. You kind of referenced like football as like a kind of like a double season, or there was kind of like a wasted season. For a guy who's both played and coached football, football is different than any other sport in its scheduling piece to it, because you only play 1 game a week.
Right.
And when you win, there's nothing better.
Yeah.
Because you've practiced for so long to get that win. And when you lose, there's nothing worse.
Yeah.
Like there really isn't. So like and I think you hit the nail on the head when you say how it's like, it just energizes the team. They get the win. I have it on my list as well too.
Me too.
But I just think it's just like this, because in order to get out of a funk in a season like that, where you feel like it's going to be a wasted season, you need somebody to make a play like that
Yeah,
he does to start.
You need one of those catalysts, those turning point type plays. And obviously, we're not asking for a 99-yard touchdown, but if there's anybody on that team that can give us one, it's that man. Nobody can tackle him, not in the open field. An honorable mention, by the way, was post game watching Chuck Priore in the middle of his team, huddled around, I guess a little post game powwow. He's hyping them up, and he's got a gash on his forehead. I've never seen Chuck Priore in a better mood than I did after that game.
I'm telling you, there's nothing better than and when you get a win after you've been losing as well too. The pasta tastes better at dinner that night. It's just unbelievable,
especially at home.
Yeah.
Matt, you're covering that game from the studio. I'm interested in your perspective on that, especially because you've been following them obviously for so long, engineering all those losses. When you hear obviously Mo and Anthony calling that game, and Stony Brook starting from the 1 yard line, what are you expecting?
This was exactly as described. The great thing about it it was a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see a play like that, especially when the team had been in such a funk, the first thing you're thinking about is they better make the most of this. They better. Okay, now that you set the stage, now you got to finish it.
Oh yeah, you can't lose that game now.
Exactly.
And boy, did they not.
No,
they didn't lose for quite a while after that.
It woke them up. I mean, it's a type of thing you really can't tell what's going to happen unless you look at it in retrospect. Okay? At the end of the game, you can say, yep, that set the stage for it. When it happens, you're saying that better set the stage for a win.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's what you're thinking. If you're calling the game, that's exactly what you're thinking. Is it now that they've gotten the crowd riled up, now that they've gotten everybody energized, now they got to come through. And you know what? And on the next possession, the next possession, you have to come up with a stop.
Yeah, for sure. And they did, again, I can't emphasize this enough. Delaware was ranked.
Yep.
Stony Brook had no business, given what had gone on the past, over a year, dating back to the second half of 2019. Just given the trajectory of the two programs, Stony Brook had no business destroying them like they did.
Yeah. It was it last year, Mike? It was that Jets-Titans game where the Jets ended up winning. Where the Titans, they make it pretty far in the playoffs, and the Jets, they get their first win of the season against this awesome Titans team.
Hey, you know what? Even I would like to invoke the blind squirrel theory and the broken clock method.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Well, it is one of the reasons why a team going 0 for a full season is so rare.
Right.
Detroit Lions, Boston College,
Cleveland Browns.
And when they win, when you see the locker room for a team that only gets one win, and you see them the day of their win, they celebrate as if they've won the Super Bowl. Right?
Yeah, remember the 2020 Jets?
Yeah, it's been the Giants the last 5 years.
Yeah. Now in college, there have been programs that have gone years without a win.
Yeah. Columbia
did it. Northwestern did it way back in the 80s. And I remember what happened when Columbia broke its schneid. I think it was 30 straight. It was ridiculous. You could have entered as a freshman and graduated without seeing a win.
Yeah.
And when they finally did it, that whole neighborhood just erupted.
Oh, yeah. Had to have.
That's now, Columbia. An Ivy doesn't take the sports very seriously, but that they took seriously.
Right. Let me keep the line moving now. So to my number 8 moment, women's lacrosse trounces Albany for 62nd consecutive conference victory. Obviously we know what all the winter and spring teams went through with being disqualified from postseason contention, and these ladies they only had one guaranteed game left to go, technically. I mean, we were pretty confident that they would, that the selections committee would give them the bid. But it was all too possible that, hey, if they do slip up this Monday, we might not see them play again. But they handled business, man. 16-5 blowout. By the way, that 62-game conference winning streak is the longest of any Division I sports program anywhere across the country.
Yep.
Water polo. Nobody has a longer winning streak.
Not
any
golf,
sport, any
tennis,
school, anywhere.
Nope.
Nope. No not men's sports, women's sports, baseball, softball, football, basketball, tennis, swimming, cross country, track. None of it.
And it's one they were actually fighting for a long time, because previously it was Texas, I believe, who had a 50, at the time it was 51 straight wins in conference play. And Oklahoma ended up upsetting them. I think it may have been in the conference tournament, and that ended their streak, maybe right before it. So yeah, that was something Stony Brook had for about a year or so. And unlike Texas, it's a record that's not going to be beaten because they're leaving the conference. So, that 62-game America East streak, it'll end, but I mean, it'll never really end because no America East team ended up beating them.
Absolutely.
I think it doesn't matter at all. I think their conference sucks. I think it's really unimpressive. I hate to say it. I don't know any other way of putting it. I just think that I've got the women up there in the top 10. I do.
Well, they reappear. Don't worry.
And I think that they are phenomenal. I just think that the conference sucks so bad it doesn't even count.
Matter.
It doesn't even matter to me. I just don't think I just don't even see it like. It's not even it's not even worthy. They shouldn't even have played the games. That's how upset.
That's okay. All right, hey, we're allowed to disagree.
The only reason it's also not on my list, but it is something while you were saying it, Mike, I was thinking maybe I should put it there. But even though I do have a couple of women's cross moments on this list,
it was the number 62 that I felt obliged to put it in there. And plus, how stupid would it be if I didn't have the women's lacrosse team in this list, right?
Yes, exactly.
So anyway, keeping the ball rolling here, we're going to go to number 7 now. And this one was a really tough one because I didn't know if I should pick this day or the next day, but I went with this one. Giordano and Durkin go back-to-back to win it in the 10th against Umass Lowell. Now, they're trailing 6-5 with one out in the bottom of the 10th, and then Evan Giordano blasts a game-tying home run out to left center. And then just 2 pitches later, Cole Durkin puts one in the exact same spot right over the left center field wall to win it. It was the second walk-off of Cole Durkin's career, and it was the first walk-off win for the baseball team this year. Now, the reason why I struggled with this one is because the very next day, in the bottom of the 9th inning, losing by 3, they went back-to-back again, and once again, it was Giordano tying the game. And then in the 10th inning, Giordano won it with the bases-loaded walk. So it was tough for me, but I think the back-to-back home runs to win it is more cool than back-to-back home runs to tie it. Greg, Matt, Ken, your thoughts?
Doing it on back-to-back days.
I know. That's why I struggled with
that
it.
Itself
back-to-back
is an event.
Back-to-back days.
Walk-offs, yes. Walking off with a walk, okay, fine. But tying it with the home run, you still had to do that.
And Giordano hit both tying home runs.
Yeah.
In different orders, obviously, but still. And
we still haven't gotten to another walk-off that could be move up.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to number 6 now. So I wanted to give some love to the women's basketball team.
About time. Well, actually, no. What they did should rank higher, but go on.
Sure. So women's basketball extending their win streak to 11 games versus Umass Lowell. You're going to notice the Umass Lowell and Albany are at the footnote of a lot of these moments.
Of course. But the other nice thing about it is that, that 11-game winning streak, look who they beat.
Yeah. Hey, I'm on Greg's side here. To me, that doesn't make my list because
Washington
it's competition.
State and Penn,
Yeah, that's on my list. Yeah, that specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And again, too, I wanted to include this, led by a new head coach in her first year with the team, Ashley Langford. They showed no signs of regression. As a matter of fact, they might have been better. At one point in the season, they might have been better. They held off UMass, right? That was their 11th straight victory, improved them to, I think it was 22-2, or maybe it was just 20-2 at the time. And it was the second longest winning streak by a Stony Brook team this year. So, how are we feeling about that?
So far, so good.
Okay. Yeah, I like it, and I do think I like your comment about her first year season. I think it's a good springboard for her, and it'll be a good springboard for her recruiting as well too.
And we've actually seen a couple too, just through social media. Players like Lauren Fillion, Khalees Whiting, Delaney Yarborough, and Shamarla King. Three freshmen and a junior guard transfer in King. All joining the team next year. So you're starting to see what comes after. Obviously, all those graduates in Wool, Pagan, Boucher, Lee.
Wool isn't.
Wool's not on the roster that I'm looking at right now.
No, I didn't even know that. Yeah. Oh, hold on, let me.
But it's going to be interesting because, as you said, Greg, you kind of alluded to it.
That breaks my heart.
She was my pick for MVP this year.
as you alluded to, Greg, a more guard-oriented offense. I definitely feel that. You have Annie Warren leading the point, Gonzalez, graduate and senior there. King is probably going to transfer to not a six-player role to replace Charles. Should probably be another guard that they turn to heavily. And right now, the 4 spot, obviously, Vargas Reyes probably is going to be in the 4 and in the 5, and Keelis Corley is going to be in the 4.
They can figure. They've got a lot of time to figure that out. Let's not start projecting starting lineups.
Right. But my point is,
it's fun. It's fun.
It is fun. Oh yeah. No, I love doing that.
You're going to see a different lineup from last year's team to this year's.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be day and night. I mean, you're going to have Gigi at the point and Annie at the 3, and then after that, it's like, I don't know, or Annie at the 2. But I don't know. I would probably.
Positionless basketball is a sport right now.
At this point, it's just who's good at the sport. You carry the ball. But anyway, we're going to move on to the top 5 now. So number 5, it's our Cinderella team from this year. The Cinderella team, of course, was the men's soccer team. Men's soccer shutting out UAlbany on senior night to snap the playoff drought. Now, they were bottom of the barrel, awful in 2019 and 2020, and they entered with low expectations, projected to finish 9th, which is second to last in the America East. So, as it turns out, they were pretty good. They were really good on the defensive side of the ball. They were playing for a home playoff game that November night, the first night in November, and they clinched 1-0 victory over Albany. So, freshman Bas van Beckhoven scored within the first 8 minutes to draw first blood. And the defense, like they did for most of the year, suffocated. Did not allow any open looks. Eddie Kaiser did his thing. And they clinched. They clinched the 4 seed. They went from being picked to be the second worst team in the conference to hosting a playoff game. So to me, that really mattered. It mattered for Ryan Anatol. I was really happy to see Gabe Fernandez get a playoff berth in his last go around. Just how are we feeling about that moment?
Yeah, I think too. This moment I think goes beyond and into the future because it sets the soccer up for a really interesting season upcoming. Obviously, transferring conferences, you can see a lot of changes there. But as you said, if a relatively young team. And now they have a year of collegiate experience under their belt. They're coming into this conference, but having learned and accomplished so much, it raises the bar for them and what they could accomplish, especially just with how far they overexceeded expectations.
Yes. Having said that, because of their overperformance and the large graduating class, I do expect a regression with the switch to the CAA. But, we'll see. We'll see what they're made of. But this will definitely be the ultimate test.
Their schedule isn't up for next year, and I'm intrigued to see where they go with their non-league games because I think that's going to be really important for them. If they can get a good jump in some of their non-league games, and some of this young talent that we're seeing on the team has developed more this in the off season. Then maybe it can springboard them into continuing to be successful. I think that's what I would be hoping for if I was the coach.
Right, and they were outstanding in those non-conference games last year. I mean, they beat LIU, and LIU was good in 2020. So I don't think anybody was expecting that. They played very competitively against Hofstra. So they've got something cooking over there, and this was definitely one of my favorite moments. I was also in attendance for it too, so I'm a little biased. But number 4 for me, I was not there. Anthony Roberts hits a buzzer beater versus Sacred Heart.
Yep.
Now, after starting the season 0-2 and being blown out by the number 3 team in the country, men's basketball came home to play their 2021 home opener. They lost their lead, right? Game was tied at 72 apiece. Inside of 1 second, Anthony Roberts, starting shooting guard, stud, love him, we'll miss him big time.
Told the team.
Take the jump shot, drills the walk-off buzzer beater, and gives the team their first win of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said it too, first win of the season, coming off a couple of tough games. Obviously, starting off against George Mason, facing number 3 Kansas, which we broadcasted, and those 2 big road losses. Didn't really know what the team was. Didn't really, couldn't understand much from it because of how lopsided those losses were. So this helped kind of give us a better idea of the team. And as you said, seeing guys like Roberts hit that buzzer beater was definitely a huge step up, because it led to him, I think, really dominating for a lot of the season alongside Tyke Green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I it should be noted that was the game that Elijah Alani went down.
Mm-hmm.
So huge negative momentum swing turns into one of the loudest games of the year. Island Federal exploded when he hit that shot. So now for number 3, and this is what Matt was alluding to earlier, but it's obviously the baseball team's rally against Jersey Tech. I mean, if anybody here read my series recap article, I opened it with Evan Giordano's swing, capped off 2 rallies at once, because not only did that finish the comeback within the game, but it finished the comeback in the standings. Coming into that series, Stony Brook needed to at least take 2 out of 3 and hope to God that the last place team beat the first place team. Hartford against Maine. Hartford sweeps, unbelievable. I would not put the house on that. And then they take 2 of 3 from Jersey Tech. They win game 1. They lose a gut-wrenching game 2. They're down 5-0 in game 3. All of a sudden, drop fly ball, run scores. Giordano, 3-run bomb. Oh, now it's a 1-run game.
Yep.
Evan Fox with a 2-out double. Matt Brown-Airing taps a weak ground ball, and Foxy, with a mad dash from second base, scores on a ball that didn't leave the infield. Tie game. Josh O'Neill comes out of the bullpen, gives the team the best 6 2/3 innings of his life. And then in the bottom of the 10th inning, Evan Giordano, down in the count 0-2, gets a fastball, lines it to center. DiStefano comes around third, dives in head first, and the Seawolves win the America East. So, to me, that was a really great moment. It would be higher if it weren't for some real massive accomplishments. But how are we feeling about that? I'm sure that moment was.
It definitely rates high. I mean, we can reorder them any way we like, but I mean, the great thing we're doing here is we're putting it out there. And again, 631-632-9872, 631-632 WUSB. If you want to contribute and maybe move some up or knock some down, but it's definitely a top 5 moment. And the other thing too is that game the day before, where it was 7-4 and after the 5-run 5th inning,
right? It was a dramatic.
Then the rain hits, and I'm out in the elements. I borrow a golf umbrella from a fan to keep the equipment from shorting out. Fortunately, I had plastic covering for the equipment, but I'm like, why aren't they stopping this game?
Yeah.
And saying straight up. And the next day, a couple of days later, actually, the next day, I talked to Matt Seng. He said, no one even thought about it. Umpires never considered it. Coaches never considered it. I'm like, what?
Yeah, but when there's a championship online, when there's an NCAA regional online, Yeah, let's all run for cover.
Maybe that's it.
Anyways,
maybe that was
right.
it. Was kind of like
you must have learned from last year. Yeah.
It may have been kind of like a response to last year. But
I think so.
Here's the thing that made no sense is that the forecast the next day was fine and the weather was fine.
It was gorgeous. I got sunburned, man.
Yeah. Well, again, going back 10 years ago to the super regional at LSU. And of course, first of all, Louisiana is a big swamp to begin with. But at that time of year, you get hit with monsoons. So a game wins extra innings because one error made in foul territory, extended it, and then they kept answering each other with runs for a couple more innings. Then a monsoon hits and says they're not getting this game in. They suspend it and restart it the next day. Why couldn't they do that?
I know.
It was part of the story because Kevin Gaussman was the game 2 pitcher, and they brought him in to pitch the resumed game. So he got the goose egg. The LSU won that, but then he had to pitch game 2, and the Seawolves got to him.
Oh yeah,
he's had nightmares ever since.
And
yes, right.
And
he said it himself.
That tweet, somebody mentioned Stony Brook, and Gaussman says, "What was Gaussman's response?"
I don't even like hearing the words Stony Brook or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, Kevin, Stony Brook is 2 words, but whatever.
Yeah. But secondly, the fact is, hey, he remembers that no matter how far he goes in the major leagues, ends up in the Hall of Fame, Stony Brook beat him.
Yeah.
In the NCAA Super Regional.
On national television.
Yeah.
A couple people here and there were watching. Yeah. That was but luckily that rain in game 2 did not throw the result by the wayside. Mainly because Hartford did their jobs.
Yes.
They're really the
kept
unsung
winning.
And that in and of itself could be a top 10 moment as Hartford secures the sweep.
Yeah, because honestly, I went so far as to call Hartford a zombie program.
Yeah.
Right. But I'll tell you something. I love it when underdog just rises up and says, "You know what? If we sweep these guys, we're in the tournament."
I know, right? Like, for whatever reason, they kind of just they stumbled upon a playoff appearance. Yeah, I mean, they woke up one day, in mid-May, and they're like, if we just win out, like, we're in the playoff. Like, they kind of they weren't expecting it at all. They were tanking. They were hoping for the number 1 pick next year. Yeah, and then they were like, you know what? Nah, we can do this now.
It kind of reminds me of the movie Major League, right?
Yeah, minus the World Series trip. But
but the great thing about it is that this teammate, a ragtag team, finds out, wait a minute, we got a chance. We could do this.
Yeah, anything is possible. It's why you play the game, right?
That's baseball, Susan.
Yeah, and I'm going to transition to number 2 now. This may ruffle some feathers because it's not number 1, but we'll see. So for me, number 2 is women's lacrosse defeating Rutgers and advancing to the NCAA quarterfinals. That speaks for itself. I don't really think I need to describe it, but given the 8th seed by the selections committee, they knocked out Rutgers. They played a nationally televised game the next week on ESPNU against the number 1 team in the nation, who eventually went the distance.
Yes,
so I mean, that was a huge moment for Stony Brook Athletic.
No dispute there. But go ahead, guys.
Yeah, and that's funny because I have a specific player in mind that's on my list because of it. It's actually lower, I guess, because it's focused more on that individual. But I think it's definitely fair on that list because, again, they made it once again, even with the bad seeding. They actually, that was their toughest competition up to that point at that point of the season and postseason. And yeah, as you said, they managed to pull through once again. And you can even argue too that UNC game, despite the result, that also could be a top 2 moment.
Not really
how competitive it was, and the fact that this isn't an argument. It was the best game of the tournament.
It was the de facto final.
Yeah, of that point, it really was. As UNC went on to win the rest of the way, like that really was a championship.
Right, and again, we mentioned this last week. That was only the second game that UNC trailed at the half. Yeah. I mean, and we still had the lead in the third quarter. We had them right where we wanted them.
Yeah, no, that was the best game up to that point, and that day, because you remember the other two contests were sweet or
very
just
reminiscent
blowouts.
of way back in the 1990s, the Knicks and Bulls meeting in the Eastern Conference, and then the Bulls having a cakewalk the rest of the way. But everybody anticipated that matchup, and Lakers Celtics, of course, meeting in the final, and the Celtics, of course, in the final now. But knowing that in an earlier round, thanks to seeding, well, some of it's due to seeding. I mean, Knicks and Bulls, because they play in the same conference, is going to end up that way. But but in this case, a little bit higher up to where they should have been, a couple of places higher, and they would have faced North Carolina in the Final Four.
For sure.
And that they could have gotten to easily. Right.
And, I mean, remember Spallina said, like, well, I knew we were going to face UNC. I just figured it would be a week from now. So
yeah, I mean, the only thing I will say about that is, like, all right, if they get the 7 seed, which is really what I thought they would have gotten as well, too. I kind of thought that would have been the spot that they deserved. They'd be playing BC, and Carolina beats BC by a goal in the championship game. So
I think they play Maryland.
Maryland was 2?
Yeah. BC was 3.
Oh, then definitely that would have been a definite advantage for them. All right, then my mistake.
It's okay. Hey, yeah, you're forgiven. We're family here.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg. You're about to say something.
No, yeah, I was just going to say that if they were playing BC, like, they still have to beat that whoever they play in that round,
right?
And I don't think there's a cakewalk in that. So, like,
no, I agree. Whether it's Maryland at 2, BC at 3, or even Northwestern at 4, who beat Stony Brook earlier in the season. Stony Brook's at 5, where they were ranked by U.S. Lacrosse magazine.
I actually thought that I kind of thought that Northwestern might have been the best team in it, and maybe even North Carolina played its best lacrosse earlier in the year. And kind of like when you look at their schedule and their record, that they beat Stony Brook by 3, but then they beat Northwestern by a goal, and they beat Boston College by a goal.
Right.
But they were trouncing teams earlier in the year.
Yeah.
They were almost like they were running out of gas a little bit.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because really it starts, I think, at the Stony Brook contest, because they get held to 8 goals, which is the least they were held to the entire season. And then they go into the semifinals. They have to come back to beat Northwestern, and then they have to pull off a huge comeback to beat number 3 Boston. And you're right, those are 1-goal games. And I think it goes to show the top 4 and top 5 schools were so close together compared to the rest of the Ncaa. And it sucks, again, Stony Brook, got screwed over in that sense. But at the same time, it really was up there, and North Carolina, despite not playing the rest of the cross, managed to remain undefeated. So impressive from them. And Stony Brook team keep it that competitive, as the rest of the day it was not competitive.
Definitely. Let me cap it off now, because we are officially at my top spot, and this is probably no surprise, but of course it's Stony Brook beats UMBC in historic double no-hitter. April 27th, 2022. It's got to be one of the most unexpected things to ever happen on the campus of Stony Brook University. Lefty ace Courtney Coppersmith towing the rubber for UMBC, and Stony Brook's never hit her before, and they literally did not hit her that day. She threw a no-hitter. However, our girl Dawn Bodrig, she was par for the course. She threw her, and I'm not exaggerating, her 4th no-hitter of both the year and the month.
Unbelievable.
Striking out 12, only walking 2. And in the bottom of the 3rd inning, a couple of sloppy, rather stupid, really is the proper word, sloppy, stupid defensive miscues consecutively hurt UMBC. And it led to 2 unearned runs for Stony Brook. They held on to win by that score. And that no-hitter for Dawn was the 6th no-hitter of her career, including 1 perfect game. In just 3 years, by the way. She is not a 4 or 5 year athlete with Stony Brook. Just three. Still 6 no-hitters in a perfect game. She threw at least 1 in all 3 years here. And that had to have been, I understand she threw a perfect game, but there's no way that was not the most fun no-hitter she ever threw.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this many, many times. When you think you've seen everything, something will happen. I saw Randy Velarde make an unassisted triple play against the Yankees. So, but this is double no-hitter. I was talking about with everybody. I mean, I can only find out one instance where it happened over 9 innings in Major League Baseball, but somebody got hit in the 10th, and the game was decided then. But the double no-hitter is a phenomenon. I mean, I'm sure it's happened in softball before because no-hitters are more common, but to have two pitchers no-hit each other, and then, of course, I mentioned Andy Hawkins, and again, what happened, I think it was that week or a week later, somebody throws a no-hitter and loses under the same conditions.
Yeah,
right. Scoring on errors.
In
1990, which was the absolute low point for the New York Yankees in my lifetime and many others, actually maybe lowest point since like 1912. Andy Hawkins in Tiger Stadium in Detroit threw a no-hitter. Yeah, threw a no-hitter, and again, the runs scored on errors, and he ended up losing.
Right. Yeah, it's possible, man. And I mean, what I love about the softball team that day is they showed you, right? It's why you play the game. I mean, UMBC is a softball powerhouse. The Stony Brook Bats have never touched Courtney Coppersmith. And even that day, they did not, yet they still did just enough. And Dawn showed you. I mean, in my opinion, she was the best athlete this year at Stony Brook. And this includes all the women's lacrosse players. I'm serious.
That's tough.
I know
it's tough. It's close.
I know.
I think she could be the best athlete in all of sports.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't mean.
Men's and women's.
No, yeah, that was what I meant. Yeah. I was saying you would probably pick one from the women's lacrosse team, like Ellie Massera, but I think it's probably Dawn Beaudry.
Close.
I'd have to take a deeper dive.
I mean, maybe even in the history of Stony Brook. I mean, at Stony Brook.
Hey, screw it. Why not, right?
Their performances at Stony Brook. Obviously, Joe Nathan has a great major league career. But the whole point here is that, thinking about other individual performances, including past softball pitchers, including Frankie Van Durka throwing 3 no-hitters as he has a Seawolf baseball pitcher, and of course winning the game in the Super Regional deciding game with a complete game, throwing a complete game, winning in the 9th. But the amazing things that Seawolves athletes have done over the years, and then you see what Dawn Beaudry did this year. And again, being no-hit and still winning. And and the team has to take a lot of pride in that. We didn't get a hit off her, but we still beat her.
Right. And they took first place by winning that game too. That's another reason why it was so huge.
Yeah, but again, of course, because we were disqualified from the America East, we never had a chance to defend it. You know what? And the America East, and the night it happened, Greg and I called the men's basketball game against Vermont. And
they had no energy.
We talked about it over and over again, but we also talked about the fact that how petty and spiteful it seemed to be, especially, and again, we've heard some athletes say the same thing about the America East doing that to them. And, and we're just thinking, it looks even more spiteful when you consider how well the programs have performed and how well the programs continue to perform after the announcement. Think about this. Women's basketball got into the postseason anyway. Couldn't get in the NCAA, did get in the WNIT. Women's lacrosse didn't affect them one bit.
Nope.
At baseball, they win the championship anyway, although the America East refused to admit it. They said, they shared it with Maine. No, they did not. Stony Brook beat Maine.
Doesn't work like that.
No sports. They win the tiebreaker. They're the champions.
Yeah, no sports do co-champions. If had the Bengals tied the game on that final drive, The game would have gone to overtime.
Falcons Patriots.
Someone would have won in overtime. Yeah,
like Patriots wasn't co-champs, right?
Yeah.
It was in overtime,
right? And the Patriots won it. You know, like it wasn't like congratulations to Matt Ryan and Tom Brady co-Super Bowl MVP. Like, it doesn't work like that.
All right.
So anyway, the floor is no longer mine. I want to kick this one out to Greg because this was actually Greg's pitch. And I'm sure Greg's faster than me. It's already 11:14, although I'm sure I probably have a couple of shared moments with him.
I think the only disagreement we would have on a lot of the ones you mentioned is what order they go in.
Yeah, well, Elijah, I'm sure the Elijah and the women against Albany, those probably might not be on there. And there's some honorable mentions too, but I figured I'd give those to you guys.
You know what? Because I think we're all going to agree with the double no hitter as being number one. I don't see how you cannot throw that in there. Not even throw it in there. How that's not the standard number one, right? Yeah. So I think we can leave.
That will never happen.
Yeah,
actually, I have a different one for that. Although the double hitter is up there
as number one, not number one.
Yeah, I have a different number one.
Okay, can I just throw in the ones that I have
absolutely.
in here that are not in the top 10 that haven't been mentioned yet?
Yes.
Okay. This is going to be so for my number 10 is actually a men's lacrosse one, and I don't know if it's because I played or I just know how difficult it is to do. I got Renz Conlon in the loss to Rutgers, who goes to the Final Four for men's lacrosse, winning 24 of 34 faceoffs. And I just think that is an unbelievable accomplishment in a game to have that kind of face-off ratio.
Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that. So.
Yeah, I respect it, absolutely. But that too, because it's so hard to dominate so much like that on the face-off. You know, Matt and I, we called the game once. It was the Albany Stony Brook game for the regular season title, where Austin Deskowitz won like 14 straight. And I think he also finished like 24, 34, something like that. It's real hard, you know, to win 2/3 of those opportunities at the X, especially as you said, with Rutgers being a top 4 team, how good they are overall, but especially at the X. You know, one of the reasons they're so good is because they win so many opportunities, face-off opportunities, and just pulling up the statistics here to find him. Their Fogo was Jonathan Dugenio, I believe. He was in top 50 nationally, winning over 50% of his face-off opportunities. So, you know, it's hats off to Conlon for sure. I think that was his best performance of the season, maybe even his Stony Brook career, Greg.
Yeah, the only other one game that I had looked at for him was he was 17 of 22 at St. John's. And that was part of that Long Island Cup, the first year of the Long Island Cup. The other one for men's lacrosse, and this is not my top 10, but I kind of was like toyed with this one a little bit, was the first game of the season where they beat Fairfield, and I believe it's Polinetti to McCannell for the game-winning goal. And I felt like that win, because it was like a tight game. I think it was the first game. It was a tight game. It was back and forth. And it was, yeah. So it was a Fairfield game.
Yeah, 13-12.
And I kind of felt like it was such a big win, because if you lose that game, I kind of like, it was at that moment with the America East stuff going on that I was thinking to myself, man, you lose this game and you don't have any shot at anything.
Right, starting off the wrong foot, right.
Right, you know, and it was kind of like the whole ship could fall apart. Like could be like the men's basketball team.
Or football,
right?
Yeah.
And but like men's basketball in the front,
right.
Like
where
the America East, everything fell apart. And I was like, is this going to happen? And in my mind, because I remember announcing the game, thinking to myself, is this going to be what all the teams are going to be like this spring? You know, like and then it falls apart, and then it kind of like, and I just kind of remember thinking to myself, okay, so athletics is going to continue now, you know? So, and then just in my mind, that was like a big moment, but not as impressive as Renz Conlon. For the women's lacrosse, actually for number 9, I got the 99-yard touchdown run. Now, number 8, and this is going to be my only appearance for women's lacrosse, is Ellie Massara's first quarter goal against North Carolina. I just thought that was like calling the game, but also kind of thinking to myself, all right, the women are here to play. This is going to be a game. Like this is we got something cooking here. And even though the game doesn't go the way that I think that you wanted the game to go, obviously for the women, I just thought it was like such a message being sent.
Mm. Yeah, it was a big one too, because they only scored 5 times. That was the first goal of the game for the Stony Brook up, and Masera did it herself. It was unassisted in that one, beating the best goaltender in the league in Taylor Moreno. She had to make 10 saves, allowed 5 goals, and that was one of them.
Ken, you said it earlier, and I think it is a good point. Like, does the 8-5 win for North Carolina? They won, but they didn't necessarily beat, Stony Brook, and it's almost like, does that cause the really tight games in the last 2 games of the tournament for them? And it very well could have, like, rattles their confidence there.
Yeah, I think the talent just mixed with how much it took UNC to beat Stony Brook definitely played a factor, just with how tight those contests were. And same thing too goes with Maryland and Boston College, just how tight that game was. Both teams were not at 100% come final time. It was very much down to who had enough gas in the tank, and UNC proved why they were the best team because they kept it.
But it also sent a message to those other teams that UNC was beatable.
Right. Yeah.
And, just a couple of breaks.
Close to it.
Now, I will say that I think this game, I didn't have too much trouble with the officiating, but I do believe that the Seagulls got robbed a couple of times in previous years where they were definitely in the game. Ali Kennedy's 2 yellow cards will always stand out as a perfect example of the Seagulls getting their pockets picked. But
for this game, though, North Carolina had 9 free position chances. Stony Brook only had 1. That was eye-opening to me. I thought that they wouldn't have had a few more, and that one came towards the end of the game where North Carolina had the league in the back.
It makes me laugh because from childhood, my father went to Villanova. Of course, Villanova basketball has been, everything in Villanova going back to then, the early 1950s. And he said whenever Villanova went south to play ACC or SEC teams, they'd get robbed by the referees. And that stuck in my head because I saw it happen to St. John's. I saw it happen to Syracuse. Syracuse joins the ACC, which is one of the reasons why. I've never been a big fan of the ACC, largely because of its rivalry with the Big East, but also because of those stories I used to hear about Villanova going down, other Eastern teams, Northeastern teams going down, and not being able to buy a win against them because that would have been the ultimate embarrassment. That would be like Grant going through Richmond. It's Civil War all over again. No one from the North is going to win down there. Not in their house. And sure enough, what happens? Every time, especially the NCAA, Stony Brook goes down there, Maryland, UNC, and a few others, same thing happens. Something happens that is, a call that goes against Stony Brook or multiple calls go against Stony Brook, and Stony Brook is not a team that fouls a lot. They don't give up free positions because obviously that leads to goals. So all of a sudden they're playing dirty. You got to wonder.
Well, I want to hold on. I want to hear Greg's next one too. I don't want to stall up too much longer.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say about that is I kind of felt like it was calling the game with the Carolina thing. I didn't think the penalties. I thought Carolina's full pressure ride was the reason why Stony Brook wasn't able to score. I really felt like that.
One in particular opening up the second half. I remember you talking about it specifically. 140. I think 60-second shot clock. It ate up like 40 seconds.
Yeah.
One particular ride coming out of halftime, I thought was a turning point.
Yeah. Now, okay. So number 7, Evan Giordano, America East Player of the Year. I think that's a tremendous accomplishment.
That's also on mine, but higher though.
Yep. Yeah. I have the buzzer beater block versus St. Peter's.
Good one. Oh, that's a really good one.
Yep. I'll talk about that one more.
Yeah, I just kind of felt like, Ken, you want to jump in and because it is it on your list?
Yeah, that was on mine too. And the reason I put it there was really more so because of the opponent. Okay, it's St. Peter's. The Cinderella run they went on, was big. But yeah, it was, again, that was a tight contest too. One in the middle of their non-conference season. And yeah, Tyler Stevenson Moore, he was the unlikely hero, I thought, because we talked about Green and Roberts and Jilo Jenkins as well. I want to put him out there too. Those are the big three for the men's basketball team. But Stevenson Moore came a big block for a shot that was definitely going in if he's not there. But not only that, but just the team as a whole getting a win like that at the time was big. It put them at 6-1 at home. They were riding a good wave of momentum there. And obviously it means a lot more when St. Peter's goes on this incredible run. Reminiscent to UMBC when they beat Virginia, where it's like, hey, Stony Brook beat this team. So it makes you wonder.
Yeah, and I can't believe I didn't think that. That was literally my first basketball game at Stony Brook, and I got to interview Tyler after that. And you'd think I would have thought that was a really good one, Greg and Ken. Both of you guys had it. I didn't. So
that's a game too. It was tight because Stony Brook wasn't knocking down the shots they usually did, so they could have won by a lot more.
No, they had a pretty steady offensive night that night.
They shot 34%, but they allowed the St. Peter's.
Was it 34% or was it 34% from deep?
No, 34 overall. They shot 19% from deep.
St. Peter's?
Yeah.
Okay, I believe you. Yeah. I believe you.
I generally don't question Ken on these.
I was going to say, reading it from the IS website, so unless the IS website put it wrong,
I'm going to believe you on that.
I do want to stay over St. Peter's. They were 3-6 at the time and won a conference play. So just talk about how incredible their turnaround was from this point onward, where they win enough to go all the way, and obviously I think win the MAAC and pull off some tremendous upsets.
Yeah, for sure.
Greg.
Okay, yeah. So then I've got the women's basketball team going to the WNIT that we talked about already. I do have because we talked about it so much early in the sports section as well too. I have the Stony Brook hockey. Winning the ESCHL title. I thought that was like such a big deal at the time. And I know the goaltending was like so important for them as well too. I just thought that was like a really big deal for them. I mean, do you guys have that one on there as well too?
Yeah, Matt definitely just covering them. Season, Matt.
And it was, first of all, maintaining that in the aftermath of COVID, because remember, they took a whole year off. And bouncing back the way they did.
Right. And it was close, too, because they were leading. They had a good lead in the conference play for a lot of the season. Kind of fell as of late and allowed, I think it was Drexel to come up. And I think they had a 1-point lead heading into the tournament. So they were the 1 seed. But yeah, managed to hold on, win some tight contests. And yeah, first conference title since 2015 for those guys.
Let me just interrupt for a second to say Ken was totally right, and I'm an ass.
I was going to say the shooting rate for
34% from the floor.
That's
he had the box score in front of him. Of course, he's right.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, and that's the unbelievable thing, right? Because St. Peter's shot 43% overall, 25% from three, and they lose this game. They out-rebounded Stony Brook, and
Stony Brook's shot defense was good. They were so small that even on nights where they played, where they defended the perimeter well, they were still going to allow a lot of second chance opportunities. So, but it wasn't even. I remember them having a 7-point lead, and then they turned it over on back-to-back inbound passes, and all of a sudden it became a game of It became a game. Sorry, I can't speak. A game of fouls and free throws, and Tyler Stevenson Moore misses that free throw and then goes all the way back on the defensive end.
Up for it on the other end.
Yeah. So, okay. Sorry for throwing this show by the wayside. Keep going, Greg.
Okay. So then I think I'm on number 2. No, I'm on number 3, 2 or 3. Tyler King in Stony Brook versus Oregon. I just 7 solo tackles, 5 assists and 1 sack. That was like an unbelievable game. And I remember watching it and thinking to myself, this guy is all over the field and he could play for anybody. Mm-hmm. And we spoke a lot about him last week when we did the Players of the Year as well too, right?
Yep. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Put that on. Yeah.
I just think Oregon football. I don't know. It just has like such a.
That's one of that's it. Yeah, I think the brand carries it. It's like St. Peter's, where it's like in a vacuum isn't really that impressive to me. I don't think so. But you're right, because it's Oregon, it definitely raises that value. So I respect why it's that high on the list.
Yeah. I only wouldn't have put it on the list because to me that's not a moment, that's a performance. Like that's an individual performance. Now, if it were like Randy Pringle's interception in the end zone to secure the, like that would have been a moment.
Right, gotcha.
That's the only reason why I wouldn't have put it. But no, I totally agree. I mean, you said it. I loved what you said about him last week was that he could have been playing for either team.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we could say it was a moment, right? It was the most tackles any Seawolf has ever had against an Oregon team. So there you go.
Yeah, and then I got baseball winning the regular season title with Giordano's walk-off single versus New Jersey Tech. I just think that was like and you know what? It's funny. You talk about the opponent, like with the King, with the Oregon and North Carolina with the women's lacrosse team. I just think NJIT. I think that matters. That was against them.
No, 100%. That's again, you said it. I think I actually said it, but you knew what I was talking about. How can you not be romantic about baseball?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
And I mean that's the opponent is what makes it so romantic. Had that been Hartford, it would have just been like, all right, well, you should have done that.
Right. Yes.
But and then your number one, I guess, is the
softball. Yeah, it was the softball as well too.
All right, Ken, batter up.
Yeah. All right, great list for sure. I definitely bring a couple unique moments here. It's more at the bottom of the list, but number 10. First off, I think the sport we overlooked, and it's because we don't cover it on WUSB, but I do want to give some recognition to it, is Robert Becker and his performance in the Ncaa East preliminaries for men's track and field. This is a relatively new moment as well. It's happened May 28th. I believe he's a senior, so I believe he's graduating, and he finished 16th in the preliminaries, a new personal best of 3:42 in the 1500 meter at the rally relays. So he broke a record earlier this spring and he reset it again with that time. So just absolutely hats off to him, just of how difficult it's been. And it was a record, mind you, that was 10 years old at the time he broke it. So for Becker, obviously someone who he barely missed getting an automatic qualifying spot too in the next round by 0.55 of a second. So he had an absolutely phenomenal senior season, and I think to wrap it up like that, with the time of 3:42 is absolutely incredible. So hats off to him there.
Awesome, and Ken, like you said, that you bring unique picks to the to the lower half of your order. That's because there were so many good moments to choose from in Stony Brook athletics this year. Like everything could have been number 10 or 9 or 8. You know what I'm saying?
I think, you could find a moment in every program for sure. If you look hard enough to, see, what is this great moment, not only just in a bubble, but too, that really affects the future of so-and-so program,
Yeah. Ken, the one thing I'm going to say about the track and field thing as well, too, is to have a PR twice in a race. And do it two different times in the season is really difficult to do because it means you've peaking twice,
right,
at two different times. So like that doesn't happen. It'd be one thing if he broke it and then the next week broke it again, but you know what I'm saying, or in the next race broke it. But like to do it in that fashion, it means because it's so hard to keep your body at that peak because it's timed. Like in baseball, when you're batting, you can get lucky. You could be a good guess hitter and you get the ball, you get the bat on the ball and it goes. Or, in basketball, you just hot one day and then, whatever. But, it doesn't get
TJ Warren.
It doesn't get measured the same way at track and field because the numbers the time absolutely counts.
Great point.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's a good call. I really like it.
And to do it at 2 points, as you said, and to me, besides obviously just giving track and field recognition, something they deserve, but to do it at the end of the season, in the postseason, to do be at your best in the NCAA preliminaries. It's absolutely huge, especially with the wear and tear that goes through your body as an athlete, especially in track and field throughout the season. And to still pull off an incredible run, 342, finished 16th overall. And you're facing many of the best competitors across many different schools in the East Coast of the NCAA. Just great job there. And to transition to number 9, just another individual performance I put was Charlie Campbell and their performance against Rutgers. And we talked about it a bit earlier, so won't go too in depth, but they were the reason why Stony Brook wins that game. We all agree with that in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Chatted with Campbell, we said pretty much the same thing, and they're very humble in that, but can't deny it. It's just Campbell's performance was huge because that was the first time in a while where Stony Brook looked vulnerable, and it looked like they actually did look like they didn't deserve a top 5, top 6, top 7 seed, just of how close that contest was. But Campbell was locked in and did a great job stopping Rutgers, held their best score to, I think, 2 goals on the afternoon, faced a lot of free position chances, and I think only gave up 1 free position goal, if even that. So, yeah, my number 9, just because they're why Stony Brook gets into the Elite 8 this season.
Yeah, and it was nice to hear from her when she was talking about almost like she had some demons there that she wanted to get past, right? It was like almost like she felt like she hadn't lived up to her expectations and hasn't played as well. And it was nice to see it come full circle for her as well too. And I agree, they do not get that far without her playing as well as she did.
Yeah, Campbell had a great game in that one. Obviously, it also helped Stony Brook end their campaign undefeated at Lowell Stadium for the 3rd straight season. 20 wins in a row, second longest active home streak in the nation, and season high 12 saves. So that's all.
But they don't get out of the Rutgers game without her.
Yeah. Moving up to number 8, we talked about earlier, Lawton, his 90-yard touchdown run. We talked about the significance of it, but longest play from scrimmage in program history, beating Oliver Bridges' 95-yard run back in November 1991 at pace.
And it will never be topped.
No, it's true. Can only be tied.
It can only be tied. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Well, Chuck did say you forgot the end 3 quarters. So
there you go.
Maybe it can be topped.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked obviously about that run, but he had a great game. Set a career high at the time, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. At the time, it was CAA leading both rushing and touchdown totals. Mm-hmm. And as you said, they used that momentum, carried through the first half, scored 13 unanswered before Delaware puts points up on the board. But even so, Seawolves just annihilated Delaware. And I said the week before, I think, that I don't see the Seawolves team winning the game. And they proved all of us wrong. Oh, yeah. And it was stunning how...
No, Ken, just you.
Oh, just me, sorry. Yes, they proved me wrong, and I was stunned. Yeah.
No, I'll jump on that bandwagon. I shamelessly agreed with Ken after that Fordham. Yeah, it was after the Fordham game that you predicted.
That's the thing, right? It's the Fordham loss that stunned me because they dominate Fordham so easily over the past 4 or 5 seasons,
and then they just came out so flat. They might have lost by the same score that they won by against. Oh, wait a minute, hold on.
Maybe that was a different year, but it was just that too, you're going up against the ranked team, just no chance, right? That they beat them. And in the manner they did it too,
it's like fringe. It wasn't even a fringe ranked team. Right. It wasn't like 26th.
Right. Like if you could bet on that being the first play of scrimmage, Lawton scores a touchdown run, you'd be a millionaire, unironically, if they allowed you to bet on that.
Let alone 99 yards.
Yes. Like if you predicted that play, you would be a millionaire. Like that's how unlikely the whole game went. And that kicked it off. Yeah. And before I switch, just
he bet on that. But
just shout out Tyler King because that game he also had a career high 12 tackles, 6 solos, 6 assisted. So there you go, Tyler King.
Right, 2 MVPs. They both showed out. Yeah. Big time players, big time plays, big time games.
Number 7 for me was women's basketball beating Washington State. Big win for them. First victory over a Pac-12 opponent in program history. First time in program history they defeated a Power 5 opponent at home. And something that we're forgetting to talk about, this game wasn't scheduled on their schedule. Right. See, they're supposed to face Hofstra, but Hofstra had to pull out due to COVID protocols. So Stony Brook didn't have an opponent. I think that was a Saturday game they had planned at Hofstra. And at the start of the week, it wasn't on the list. But a couple days later, Sean Helbron's able to get in contact with Washington State. They played, I think, at Yale, or they were going to Yale maybe the day after. So they said, sure, we'll play Stony Brook. And yeah, huge upset, 69-62. Just incredible showing. First team in the conference to win 2 games against Power 5 opponents in the same season since Maine back in 2015. And it was a great game from Erlen Scott, 20 points.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
There you go.
I mean,
10 boards. So, yeah.
Know personally that that this was I wanted to put this on the list because I texted you before the broadcast. I'm like, hey,
yes.
Who was that other Power 5 school we beat? So yeah, but I figured I'd just defer to someone else. But yeah, this is definitely this was perhaps at the time the best moment of the year.
Yeah, definitely at that moment too, because no one won a championship in the fall, and come winter, right, you just have basketball to look at. And at the time, things were treading in the right direction for both programs, really the women's program.
Yeah,
it's just how comfortable they looked winning. 69 points were the second most anyone scored on the Cougars at that time. Mm-hmm. They held the Cougars well below their average, and they dominated the boards too against Washington State. So big win from the women's team. As we move to the other basketball program for number 6. And
that's on my list too, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this one, Anthony Roberts and his 40-point game against Maine was huge. 9 3-pointers from him, the most by any player in program history. Helped Stony Brook win 85-74. This was back in February 2022. And Roberts, his 40 points was a performance we hadn't seen since Jameel Warney in the American Championship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like we alluded to in the earlier half of this show, that Jameel dragged that team into the playoffs, into the tournament with him. And yeah, do you know, Ken? Because I'm sure you have the stats out right in front of you. Do you know where that 40-point performance ranks all time?
Second, behind Warney, 43.
There you go. Then there you go. So that would make it only the second 40-point performance in program history.
Up to the time, yeah.
Yeah, he certainly had an unreal year. He was perhaps the biggest acquisition this offseason for the basketball, obviously, for the men's basketball team. I don't think anyone's outdoing Charlie Campbell.
No, absolutely. And my number 5 was the Stevenson Moore game-winning block. I'm going to talk about that again, but a huge moment because of what will follow. Unfortunately for Stony Brook, that was maybe their peak, because they go on to face Florida, and then they start conference play, and then obviously the news comes out. For St. Peter's, they turn it around, a huge Cinderella run, so hats off to them.
Yeah, well, they were 4-1 in conference play, I think, by the time the news came out. Okay, so I think that they were still on a good roll.
Right, but looking back, that was definitely the peak.
Yeah.
You could take
that was
either
peak,
take your pick between Roberts balling out or Stevenson Moore.
Yeah, but just by that point, I mean, when Roberts went off, it was over by that point.
Yeah.
Why he got so many touches.
I think we like that block so much only because of where St. Peter's went to. Right?
That's why I put it up there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was a game. It was a game winner. That was exciting. It was a packed house that night. I think that it might have been you have it at number 5. I would have probably had it lower, but yeah, I think that the St. Peter's thing kind of doubles its value. But I think had it been against Joe Schmo University, I think it still might have been an honorable mention just because of how.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? If against someone like like Umass Lowell, right? Maybe it's an honorable mention, but but it's the same thing to me with Oregon, where because it's who they played, it deserves recognition. I think this is something that at the time I don't think deserves to be on the list, but just looking back, it's earned its way there because of how well the opposition played. Yeah. So for number 4, I put Stony Brook women's basketball clinching the WNIT berth, and Greg spoke about it, but to me, it was big because, the news broke that they're not getting they're disqualified from conference championship. So, and this was during while they were fighting for a first place spot, and they were fighting hard. Then they started to lose, and they were trading losses with wins. So, everyone was wondering, are they going to get a shot to play in the playoffs? And they actually did earn, I think, a vote in the Ncaa rankings for a little bit until the final week of the regular season. and then they end up losing by 2 to UMass Lowell, and then end up losing in the buzzer beater to U Albany to close out the regular season. And everyone's thinking, we're on the show saying, it's how likely is it they get a playoff spot?
Yeah.
And,
right.
It didn't seem likely at all at that point. We thought that was done.
And part of that is why I didn't put that in my list, because I feel like that was almost a gift. That was almost like a throwing Stony Brook a bone, because when you lose those final 2 games in the way that they did, that's a disaster. That's a real disaster. And look, I love the women's basketball team. But to a degree, I'm not, just because of how they finished those last 2 games, I'm not entirely sure that they did deserve the bid, so that's, having said that, they still got it.
I don't think the WNIT is in the habit of giving gifts out.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. I would understand.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree with the premise that, listen, they ran out of gas at the end down the stretch.
Right.
I definitely agree with that piece, but I think on the merit of winning the 5 power conference games, or the Power 5 games, Power 5 teams, I think on that merit they get in. That's why.
I agree with that, where they looked at the start of the season, they're like, hey, you're one of the best teams. You, at one point, you got a vote in the Ncaa rankings. You beat Power 5 team on, especially one team that you didn't even plan to face until maybe 3 days before. So, yeah, I think that definitely played a big factor. And I think I really put it in because of that emotional aspect of, were they going to make it, were they not? So the fact that they were able to get a spot, and a respectable spot of that too, facing a team in VCU, where coaching-wise, there's a lot of history there, right? Former Stony Brook coach. It was, to me, it deserved a spot. And also just a hats off to, those great players who graduated, like Will, Pagan, Boucher. And for number 3, my 1, 2, and 3 is really interesting. And my 3, I put ball drug. I put the double no hitter. Really, I couldn't decide between that or any no hitter.
Ken, hit the leave button. You're kicked out.
And I'll explain why my 2 ones are actually baseball related. But for 3, it was the ball drug no hitter. Maybe all of them. That's the other thing, right? Is that does ball drug serve first for all those no hitters combined? I'm okay doing that too.
So here's the interesting thing about Dawn is she had that one hit shutout that was more impressive than 3 of her no-hitters, right. And she threw 4 no-hitters. So you could literally say Dawn Bodrick has 5 of the top 10 moments. You could argue that this is just a Dawn Bodrick highlight reel.
Yes, but exactly. And that's the other thing too. I don't want my list to be focused on one player who's very deserving of many of these spots. So that's why just to keep it fair, I compiled them all, put them at number 3. And phenomenal season and individual performance. And that's the other thing too, is that, these are individual performances and by someone who's absolutely phenomenal. And obviously a big loss to the program with Bull Drug's graduation.
Yeah, huge dent. But we're going to be speaking to her this week.
Very soon, yes, very soon. Be on the lookout for that, probably for next week's show. But for number 2, like Greg, I had Giordano winning Player of the Year. I also added very recently too, you could put Ellie Macero and all those women lacrosse players who won Players of the Year for the conference, and really that's
All-Americans. Ellie Macero making All-American.
Yeah, and you can put that as well, just because you're essentially you're disqualified from winning the conference championship. Unless you're women's lacrosse, you're really not playing for anything. And these players still went out there, put it all out on the field. And in Giordano's case, he was named the best player in the American East. In the cases of players like Sabella and Macera and Campbell and the other names I'm forgetting, they were named the best players in the American East. And Macera on top of that too, to earn All-American recognition. Just hats off
First
for all of them
team.
for exactly that too. It wasn't like, they earned those spots and they were first team. So they were elevated and put on the highest pedestal you could get when really they had nothing to play for. They could have easily, sat out or not given their all because, well, besides women's lacrosse, but, there's really nothing there. But each team, for the most part, found reasons to continue. And in those cases, like Giordano and Ncaa, they went above and beyond the rest of the league.
But even better yet, she is the first Stony Brook lacrosse underclassman, in other words, not a senior, to earn first team honors. And only 2 underclassmen on the squad this season, Belle Smith from Boston College. So, I mean, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that's definitely got to make it in there.
Probably looking at CAA Player of the Year. I was going to say, she performed so good, she's probably Player of the Year next year.
She's only scratching the surface, too. She got a lot better as the year went on. The one thing I think she does really well as a player, she can dodge on the run and she can score on the run. So she can shoot on the run. And not all players can do that. And she can do it accurately. She can put some speed on the ball. And she can find location with it. And that's what makes her so dangerous of a player.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think she's going to take all the draws next year, I think. Her and Hampel, I would imagine, right?
I would say at the moment, yeah, it definitely feels that way because she can do it all,
She really can. And I think to start the season, like we talked about with Polinetti, she's probably going to get asked to do more at the start of the season, and then they can kind of like figure who else is doing what, right? And then kind of disseminate some of that stuff. Yeah,
especially now that she is an classmen and there's taking over those roles from the graduates like Sarah Pulis, like Siobhan Rafferty, Raina Sabella in the midfield. Definitely. Number one was definitely, I put it there because of the impact it had emotionally and just kind of the statement it gave, and it was baseball winning the regular season title, and because just of the dramatics of the entire game, right, coming down from 5-0, the message it sent to NGIT, really the dog pile, because the first thing I thought of, and I promise it's not recency bias, but when I think what's a great moment from this season, I just think of the dog pile after the walk-off,
because it put a cap on everything, and it was a big middle finger to the America East, saying,
exactly,
we're moving on to bigger and better things, and you're not getting in our way.
Right. That's I think similarly on that length, where it's like this is the final time any program is going to win an America East title, probably ever. So for them to do it in the manner they do it, and the statement and they do it in, and obviously again the sport it's in. It's not women's lacrosse that's the last one to do it. Despite how dominant they are, it's baseball, a program who arguably should have been in got screwed over a championship title last year.
Yeah,
this time taking one away from another program.
Yeah, especially when they had another shot at doing it this year, too.
Right. Well, the 2021 team, that's just wrong. That 2021 team could have done damage in the first round of the regional. I mean, maybe not everyone will agree with that, but there were no holes in that lineup. They had a couple of good players off the bench, and they had 5 really good pitchers at the time.
That's what you need to get through that weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, they could have done it. Like, I'm not saying they could have gone to the College World Series, but you know what? I don't think we were saying that about the 2012 team until they finally did it.
No, I remember after getting destroyed by Coastal Carolina in the final game of 2010, we got on the bus, and Matt Sank said to the guys, "I believe this team is capable of getting to a super regional."
Okay. I'm talking about the media. I bet you think they could win the national title.
So the media didn't know it. The problem with Stony Brook Athletics as a general rule is that the media doesn't know anything about them except us.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones that follow the team day in, day out.
I mean, I still haven't been...
I mean, look, how many people from Newsday and from the other outside media have asked you questions about this, there, or whatever?
Yeah, a handful.
So many.
You get them. You definitely get them. I had, during one of the College World Series broadcasts, I had Greg Logan on with me. So, and Steve Marcus and I are going back and forth all the time about Stony Brook.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just for NGIT last year. So
and Bob Herzog as well.
To the Fayetteville Regional, they faced number 1 Arkansas. They actually score 8 runs against them, end up losing 13-8. They beat Northeastern 3-2 and end up getting eliminated by Nebraska, losing 18-4. So yeah, do I think they're beating number one Arkansas? Probably not. But if NJT is able to do that, you could think that Stony Brook wouldn't have been eliminated in 2 games.
I mean, you are box score scouting. They might have scored 8 runs when being blown out. When you're being blown out, the other team just starts throwing fastballs over them.
Okay, they did score 5 against Arkansas in the 7th and 8th inning, but still, you could think if NJT beat Northeastern, but even if it's twice scored 3-2, it's highly possible Stony Brook does the same thing and knocks them out.
NJIT was mediocre. They were barely over 500.
Yeah.
Oh, NJIT was not that great. I mean, look, they were right up there with Binghamton. Binghamton's the one that ends up taking the tournament.
Yeah.
They got hot at the right time.
Oh, and by the way, I threw a mini party when that happened.
Yeah, because at least
when
if
Umass
Binghamton wins it, fine. Okay, we love Tim Synicki, and we've been talking about this over recent weeks that since those schools, because Binghamton and Albany and Stony Brook went in together, since they joined the America East, the baseball championship has either been Maine, Binghamton, or Stony Brook, with a couple of exceptions.
Right, with an anomaly here and there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Oh, and you know what? Nobody mentioned this, and I was a little surprised. Corin Badger's 6th home run of the opening weekend. I think that
record.
That's a good.
It's honorable mention. I think
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Yes.
You know what the problem with that is? That we don't get to see those games.
Yeah,
because they're out of town.
My first draft had Kara McFarland's go ahead with the game-winning double at number 10, but I don't know. I realized there was no room for the men's soccer team, so I had to make room for them. It was tough, man. This was a good problem to have.
Matt, what did we miss?
You know what? I'm thinking about the 11 straight wins by women's basketball.
Great point. Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, I had that.
I mean, I was writing all this stuff down while you guys were going.
You could have the women's lacrosse win streak as well.
Softball sweeping Providence with shutouts. That's one I remember. Let's see. What else?
Well, men's soccer, when they beat Vermont was 26th in the nation. And they shut them out.
Yeah. That's
so that could have been a good one. That was the conference opener too.
Good honorable mention. Yeah.
That could have been one. They pulled off a late game upset against LIU to open the season. There were a couple of men's soccer ones where you could just think of Jonas Bichkus' first career goal, which was that LIU game. Women's soccer was, they were the disappoint. I like.
It's tough for them, yeah.
A lot, but they didn't earn it. They didn't earn a spot on a top 10 moment this year. It's
the one I thought we were going to miss, and you guys picked up on, was the beating Washington State women. Yeah. And again, power conference wins beating St. Joe. I mean, they're not necessarily power teams in the power conferences, but it doesn't matter. I mean, when Stony Brook men beat UW, University of Washington, a few years back, I think they were actually ranked at the time. And then, of course, they won the tank. But, I mean, we're past the point, and this is very big because early in the D1 days, when we went up to the Hartford Civic Center to play UConn, who were defending national champions at the time, but they had a lot of people graduate, and they were still ranked top 10, and lost to them by 9.
Yeah.
And we thought that was like a moral victory. And, of course, UConn, it hurt them because they ended up in the NIT that year. But at the time, that was considered quite an achievement. And we had a good year. It was our second year in D1. We had Leon Brisport, who was a transfer from Providence. So we had some legitimate players on that team. But we weren't even in a conference yet. We were in an Indy. So we had no chance of anything. But
you know what? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did gloss over the next day when Brown Airing and Giordano hit the back-to-back home runs to tie the game.
Yeah.
Brown Airing's home run at Binghamton, that might have been the hardest hit ball in baseball this year. That could have been up there.
Big moment, yeah.
Did that make a Sports Center top 10?
It might. Brett Paulson made it. Yeah. Brett Paulson made it twice.
Oh, stop!
He's not even in our top 10 list here.
Yeah, and he made it Sports Center top 10 twice.
10, yeah, right. Yeah.
Did women's basketball make Sports Center top 10 twice?
I don't know.
Yeah,
that was a couple
for
years
sure.
ago, right?
Yeah.
That was Mogi.
No, it was women. The women did it.
Yeah, they did once for sure. Yeah.
I think Gonzalez got on top 10.
Yeah, Gonzalez did it. Great
They
score.
might have.
Yeah.
It's tough for women's soccer too because I'm looking. You could definitely see other programs had highlights like tennis, for example. Huge win against Rhode Island at the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Rallied to win 4-3. Swimming and diving, they broke a program record at day one of the ECAC championships. I don't know what you could say for women's soccer. Maybe Alyssa Francis wrapping up a great career. Really, I don't know what.
That's not a moment. That's just well. So here's a good moment.
A really good player graduated.
Go ahead, Greg.
I don't know. I don't know what you can say for them. It sucks.
Yeah, it does.
They went 7-8-2, so you think you find something, but I don't know.
And they're supposed to win the conference.
Maddie Sleeman gets the first career goal.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's really the highlight.
So here was my favorite sentimental moment. It was game 1 of the Jersey Tech series. Derek Yallen and Matt Brown-Airing both homered, and they were high school teammates. And they'd been playing ball with each other since like elementary school. And Derek said post game that was the first time they had ever hit a home run in the same game. He said, "I was honestly wondering when that was going to happen." So that's more like a feel good story,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's a fun story for sure. Yeah.
Right now.
Okay,